Imagine this. You're standing on the deck of a ship. The water is calm, silent. But just a few hundred feet below, beneath the dark waves, lies a city. Not a shipwreck. Not a sunken ruin. But an entire city, with streets, temples, foundations, and walls swallowed by the sea long before your grandparents were born. Long before anyone remembered it existed at all. This isn't science fiction. It's not myth. It's real. In the past few decades, scientists, explorers, and deep-sea archaeologists have discovered the unthinkable. Cities beneath the ocean. Entire settlements, some dating back 10,000 years, hidden under layers of silt, coral, and time. What they're finding may rewrite the history of civilization itself. Just last month, marine archaeologists scanning the seabed off the coast of India revealed evidence of a submerged structure older than the pyramids. Before that, satellite imaging and sonar surveys off the coasts of Japan, Egypt, and the Caribbean uncovered entire networks of lost architecture, roads, walls, even stepped platforms, deep underwater. And we're just scratching the surface. Many of us grew up believing that civilization began in Mesopotamia 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. But what if that was just the beginning of the story we're allowed to tell? What if before the great flood stories, before the ancient kings and the empires, there were cities, thriving civilizations, that now sleep beneath the ocean floor? For those of us old enough to remember the thrill of the first moon landing, the wonder of opening a National Geographic and seeing untouched ruins emerge from the jungle or sand, this story is just as exciting. Because now, we're turning our gaze downward, into the deep, into the forgotten. And what we're finding isn't just rock and ruin. It's evidence of something more advanced, more complex, and more mysterious than we ever expected. In this episode of Uncharted Mysteries, we'll take you into that world. The world beneath the waves. We'll explore real discoveries. Cities submerged for thousands of years. Artifacts that defy explanation. And underwater landscapes that appear more like the work of engineers than erosion. We'll look at how cutting-edge technology, like sonar imaging, satellite scans, and artificial intelligence, is changing the way we search the seas. We'll visit the most compelling sites ever found underwater, from the submerged ruins of Heracleion off the Egyptian coast to the mysterious Yonaguni monument near Japan. You'll learn about the forces that may have buried these cities. Rising seas, sudden tectonic shifts, ancient megafloods, and even theories tied to sudden pole shifts or volcanic winters. All of which are being studied today by geologists and climate scientists trying to understand our future by studying our forgotten past. And perhaps most important of all, we'll explore how these discoveries don't just change what we know about history. They change what we know about ourselves. Because if we've lost entire civilizations before, if they were drowned by the sea, wiped clean from the maps, forgotten in the depths, what else have we missed? Could these lost cities hold secrets we still haven't uncovered? Advanced knowledge? Technologies? Warnings? And as modern sea levels rise, and more of our own coastal cities face the threat of being swallowed, Miami, New York, New Orleans, we must ask, are we repeating a cycle we once lived through and forgot? This is a journey into the past. But it's also a look into our future. So whether you're a lifelong explorer of forgotten histories, or just starting to question what lies beneath the official record, join us. Because what we're about to uncover isn't fiction. It's a forgotten chapter of our story, hidden deep beneath the oceans, waiting to be remembered. And the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. We've always known that time buries truth. But in the last few decades, that truth has begun to resurface from beneath the sea. Archaeology, for most of the 20th century, focused on ruins that were visible, pyramids rising from desert sand, temples overgrown by jungle, stone circles weathered by rain and time. But as technology evolved, so did our tools. Sonar, satellite imaging, and deep-sea drones gave us access to a new frontier of discovery, the ocean floor. And that's where everything changed. Let's begin in the Bay of Cambay, off the western coast of India. In 2001, sonar imaging conducted by the National Institute of Ocean Technology revealed something astonishing, a grid-like pattern lying over 100 feet beneath the water. At first, researchers dismissed it as a natural formation. But further scans revealed massive stone structures, rectangular platforms, and straight lines that stretched for miles. Artifacts were retrieved, pottery shards, tools, even human remains, and carbon dating suggested that these ruins could be over 9,000 years old. If that's true, it predates the Harappan civilization by 4,000 years. And predates the pyramids by nearly twice that. This wasn't just a sunken village, it was an entire urban complex. Streets, buildings, drainage systems, evidence of engineering, planning, and culture that simply shouldn't exist in the archaeological timeline. And this isn't an isolated case. Travel west, to the coast of Egypt, near the modern city of Alexandria. Beneath the silt and seawater lies the once legendary city of Heracleion, long considered a myth. It was said to be a vibrant port city that welcomed travelers and traders from across the ancient Mediterranean. A place where pharaohs were crowned and massive temples honored the gods. Heracleion vanished from record around the 2nd century BC, swallowed by earthquakes and rising tides. But in 2000, French archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team rediscovered the city beneath 30 feet of water. What they found was more than ruins. It was a time capsule. Colossal statues, ceremonial boats, engraved stele, and massive temple foundations, all preserved in remarkably good condition. What's more, many of the artifacts bore inscriptions in both Greek and ancient Egyptian, suggesting that Heracleion was a multicultural melting pot, perhaps even more sophisticated than we'd imagined. And once again, the official narrative was shaken. Then there's Pavlopetri, off the coast of southern Greece. Discovered in the 1960s and confirmed via 3D mapping in the early 2000s, it's considered the oldest submerged city ever found, dated to around 5,000 years ago. Unlike many ancient cities lost to time, Pavlopetri remains remarkably intact. Streets, buildings, courtyards, even graves, all arranged in a city-like layout. Some researchers believe it was a thriving coastal hub for maritime trade, rich in culture and economy, until a series of earthquakes dropped it below sea level. It challenges what we thought we knew about early Greek civilization, because it suggests there was an advanced, seafaring people who were building organized cities before the rise of classical Greece. Each of these sites tells a story, not just of a place or a people, but of a pattern. A pattern where civilizations we once believed were primitive were in fact organized, complex, and technologically aware. And a pattern where the sea, more often than war or famine, was the final force of erasure. How were these cities built so close to ancient shorelines, or were they ever coastal at all? Is it possible that massive floods or sea level rises, perhaps due to sudden melting, earthquakes, or ancient cataclysms, rearranged the coastlines entirely? The implications reach beyond archaeology. They ripple into climate science, geology, and mythology. Let's pause on that for a moment, mythology. Because what's fascinating is how many ancient flood legends align eerily well with these discoveries. The story of Atlantis, of course, looms large, a civilization swallowed by the sea in a single night, as described by Plato. But there are others. The ancient Sumerians told of a great flood that destroyed humanity, with only one man, Ziusudra, surviving in a boat, a tale echoed in the Epic of Gilgamesh and later in the biblical account of Noah. In Indian texts, like the Matsya Purana, there are detailed stories of Manu, a great man warned by a fish of an impending deluge. The legends often include gods, warnings, and survivors preserving sacred knowledge. It might be tempting to dismiss them as metaphors. But what happens when the ruins start to surface? When cities long thought to be imaginary are found, exactly where the stories said they'd be? And what happens when scientific data confirms that, yes, there were sudden and massive sea level changes? Between 12,000 and 6,000 years ago, a period that saw the end of the last ice age, the melting of glaciers, and the redrawing of global coastlines? That's not folklore. That's geology. Which means the legends might not be wrong. They might be memories, carried across generations, distorted by time, and finally drowned by the very waters they warned of. Today's explorers don't just rely on snorkels and shovels. They're deploying sonar, submersible drones, and even AI algorithms that scan underwater data for patterns, shapes, and ruins hidden in plain sight. One expedition in the Caribbean used machine learning to identify rectangular patterns under coral reefs, shapes that human divers had missed. In another project, AI helped archaeologists sort thousands of sonar scans to prioritize where to dig, a process that would have taken years without it. The future of underwater archaeology is faster, smarter, and more precise. But it's also chasing a growing mystery. Because with each new discovery, we're left with bigger questions. How many civilizations have we lost to the sea? How advanced were they, really? And if we're only now beginning to find them, what have we forgotten? As we continue this journey, we'll dive deeper into the possible reasons these cities disappeared. Because sometimes, the past doesn't vanish. It just sinks. The ocean doesn't just preserve ruins. It preserves riddles. Because finding an ancient city beneath the waves is only the beginning. Understanding why it ended up there, that's the real mystery. With each submerged ruin uncovered, the obvious question emerges. How did this city, once vibrant, populated, and full of life, end up beneath the ocean? And more disturbingly, could it happen again? Scientists and archaeologists are working to answer that question. And what they've discovered is far from simple. Let's start with one of the most plausible culprits, climate change. Not the modern kind, but its ancient cousin, the dramatic shift that occurred at the end of the last ice age, around 11,700 years ago. During this time, massive glaciers that covered North America and Northern Europe began to melt. The result was a global rise in sea levels, up to 400 feet over several millennia. Entire land masses were slowly drowned. Coastal communities were forced inland. Some cities didn't make it. The evidence isn't theoretical, it's visible. Bathymetric scans of now submerged coastlines show entire plains and plateaus that were once dry land. Caves off the coast of the Bahamas contain stalagmites, rock formations that only grow in air, not water, now found dozens of feet below sea level. That alone tells us the sea has risen dramatically since early human civilization began. But the question becomes, did those rising seas happen slowly or suddenly? That's where things get murkier. Some researchers point to abrupt flooding events, cataclysmic deluges caused by melting glacial dams, where huge freshwater lakes suddenly spilled into oceans, triggering rapid sea rise. One such event is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests a comet or asteroid struck North America around 12,800 years ago, rapidly melting ice sheets and unleashing massive floods. If true, it means some coastal civilizations didn't have centuries to prepare. They had days, maybe hours. In this context, the flood myths passed down through ancient texts, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Bible's book of Genesis, suddenly seem less metaphorical. These stories often describe sudden destruction, panic, and an effort to preserve knowledge or life. Could these myths be cultural memories of real disasters passed down for generations? Some scientists believe so. In fact, a 2020 study published in Nature Communications noted that many oral traditions among Australia's Aboriginal peoples, describing rising sea levels and land loss, align with actual post-glacial sea rise data. These stories were told accurately for over 10,000 years. If such memory retention is possible, it raises the question: what else did we once know and forget? But not every submerged city can be explained by glacial melting. Some may have been victims of earthquakes, tsunamis, or volcanic eruptions. In the Mediterranean, tectonic instability is notorious. Cities like Helike in Greece sank after earthquakes liquefied their foundations. Further east, legends of cities swallowed by the sea in a single night could be tied to underwater landslides or massive tsunamis, like the one that struck the Indian Ocean in 2004, displacing entire coastlines in hours. Japan's Yonaguni Monument is another puzzling case. This massive stone structure, submerged near the Ryukyu Islands, features angular steps, terraces, and straight walls that look man-made. Some geologists insist it's natural. Others, including marine archaeologist Dr. Masaki Kimura, argue it was carved by an ancient civilization, possibly destroyed by an earthquake and submerged rapidly. Even more compelling is how many of these sunken sites lie near tectonic fault lines or subduction zones, areas of the Earth's crust where sudden, violent shifts can reshape entire regions. That opens the door to another theory. What if these weren't isolated disasters, but linked events? What if an ancient cataclysm, or series of them, reshaped coastlines globally, submerging cities from India to Egypt to Japan? This idea has led some researchers to revive the concept of Atlantis, not as a single location, but as a symbol for lost coastal civilizations worldwide, all affected by a common catastrophe. But here's where it gets even more provocative. If multiple cities were lost during this ancient upheaval, how many haven't we found yet? Archaeologists believe we've only explored about 5% of the ocean floor. That means the other 95% remains a mystery, a vast underwater archive of forgotten stories, submerged temples, buried tools, and perhaps even written records waiting to be uncovered. And as new technologies emerge, we're getting better at finding them. LiDAR, multi-beam sonar, and satellite imaging can now detect architectural features hidden beneath sand or coral, even if they're barely visible to the naked eye. Artificial intelligence is playing a growing role, analyzing sonar data to recognize non-natural geometric patterns, squares, rectangles, right angles, signs that suggest intelligent design. And then there's the rise of crowdsourced exploration. Projects like Seabed 2030 are inviting everyday people to help map the ocean floor. The idea is simple: the more eyes on the data, the faster we find what's hidden. But as we uncover more, we're also forced to ask, what does it mean? Are these ruins just the remnants of small, local cultures washed away by natural disaster? Or are they evidence of advanced coastal civilizations, ones that rivaled or predated those we've long considered first? If cities like Heracleion and Dwarka prove that complex urban planning, writing, and seafaring existed thousands of years earlier than we believed, then what else do we need to rethink? History, as it stands, is mostly written on dry land. But that might be because the civilizations that came before us lived closer to the water. And when the water rose, they vanished. Now, piece by piece, we are pulling their memory from the deep. We are beginning to understand not just how they lived, but how they were lost. And as we face modern climate threats, rising sea levels, and increasingly unstable coastlines, one truth becomes uncomfortably clear. We may be living through the prologue of a story that's already been written. One that begins not on the surface, but beneath it. Up next, we'll dive into how modern technology and AI are opening a new chapter in underwater exploration, and what we might soon discover that could redefine everything we thought we knew. Because the ocean hasn't stopped hiding secrets. We've just started learning how to ask the right questions. We've searched the land. We've searched the skies. But only now are we truly beginning to search the seas. For most of human history, the ocean was a boundary, a final frontier we dared not cross. But today, that frontier is turning into a window, one revealing cities long forgotten, artifacts long buried, and questions we're only just beginning to ask. And the key to unlocking it? Modern technology. In recent years, we've witnessed a revolution in underwater exploration. No longer are we relying solely on divers with flashlights and oxygen tanks. Today, we're using autonomous submarines, AI algorithms, and satellite-based ocean mapping tools capable of scanning vast swaths of the ocean floor with precision that was once unthinkable. Take multi-beam sonar, for example. This isn't just sonar, it's sonar on steroids. Instead of bouncing one beam off the seafloor, it sends hundreds. The result? A highly detailed 3D map of what lies beneath, accurate enough to spot walls, stairs, or buried foundations, even through layers of silt and sand. In 2019, sonar scans off the coast of Cuba revealed strange, geometric structures, rectangular platforms, narrow passages, and pyramidal shapes over 2,000 feet below the surface. Some dismissed them as natural. Others weren't so sure. Because nature doesn't always build straight lines. But sonar is only part of the story. Now, enter the ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. These are underwater drones, many no larger than a suitcase, equipped with cameras, lights, arms, and even sensors that can detect chemical changes in ancient materials. ROVs can go where humans can't, deep trenches, high-pressure zones, tight crevices, and transmit real-time data to researchers aboard ships or even across continents. They've already helped discover shipwrecks, ancient cargo, and structures once thought unreachable. And now, we're teaching machines to recognize patterns using artificial intelligence. Here's how it works. Scientists feed AI programs with thousands of images, known ruins, man-made structures, natural seabeds, and then let the AI scan terabytes of sonar data, looking for anomalies. Sometimes, it flags a suspicious rectangle here, a step-like platform there. Other times, it finds entire city layouts no human noticed before. These digital eyes don't blink. They don't get tired. And more importantly, they can process centuries of ocean data in days. But it's not just professionals doing the searching anymore. Projects like Seabed 2030, a global initiative supported by the Nippon Foundation and JEBCO, are crowdsourcing ocean mapping. Sailors, fishermen, even hobbyist drone pilots are contributing data, building a global map of the ocean floor, one scan at a time. In a world where only 25% of the ocean floor is thoroughly mapped, this isn't just helpful. It's revolutionary. And here's where it gets fascinating. As more of the ocean is scanned, strange formations are being uncovered, some in the middle of nowhere, far from trade routes or tectonic zones. Circular stone arrangements, massive straight lines stretching hundreds of meters, clusters of symmetrical mounds. Are they natural? Coincidence? Or the scattered bones of civilizations long swallowed by the waves? We don't know. Not yet. But that uncertainty is why researchers are pushing harder and deeper than ever before. Take Deep Discoverer, a submersible operated by NOAA. It dives miles beneath the ocean surface, capturing high-resolution video, collecting samples, and broadcasting live feeds to researchers and the public alike. Then there's Ocean Infinity, a private company using fleets of robotic submarines to scan ocean floors faster than any government agency. And now, AI models are being trained to predict where underwater cities might exist, using data like ancient sea level maps, sediment composition, and tectonic history. Imagine it, algorithms pointing us to where ancient coastlines once were, calculating where a city should have existed 10,000 years ago. In essence, we're using the future's tools to uncover the deep past. But perhaps the most exciting part is what we haven't found yet. Because every expedition returns with more questions. Why do some underwater ruins show signs of advanced engineering, perfect symmetry, straight-cut stone, interlocking joints, far older than they should be? Why do some submerged artifacts appear more preserved than those buried on land? And then there are the whispers. Stories of explorers who claim to have seen inscriptions, statues, even submerged temples, before currents shifted, or silt clouds returned to hide them. While some of these claims remain unverified, they stir a deeper possibility. What if the ocean is not just a graveyard, but a vault? A vault of knowledge. A vault of memory. A vault of civilizations lost in the last great collapse, waiting for us to find them, perhaps before the next one comes. And here's where the stakes become personal. Because as our own sea levels rise, as coastal cities from New York to Miami to Venice face erosion, flooding, and collapse, we are witnessing, in real time, the early chapters of the same story. The very forces that may have erased Pavlopetri, Heracleion, and Dwarka are once again at play. Which means the discoveries we make now are not just about what was. They're warnings about what could be. So what does the future hold? More scans. More submersibles. More data. More ruins. But perhaps, most importantly, more humility. Because we're learning that our species has risen before. And fallen. And risen again. And somewhere in that cycle, deep beneath the waves, lies the blueprint of both our past and our fate. Up next, we reflect on why these cities matter, not just to historians and scientists, but to all of us. Because the story of submerged civilizations is not only one of stone and silence. It's the story of human resilience, reinvention, and remembrance. And the deeper we search, the closer we come to remembering something we were never meant to forget. What do we really leave behind? Buildings crumble. Statues fall. Empires fade into myth. But some legacies, though buried under oceans and centuries, refuse to be forgotten. Submerged cities aren't just architectural remnants lost to time. They are echoes of who we were, of how far we came, and perhaps, how far we still have to go. When we peer into the ruins of a sunken city like Heracleion, or the grid-like streets of Pavlopetri, we're not just looking at history, we're looking at ourselves. We're seeing a people who farmed, traded, worshipped, and dreamed. A people who built homes near water, believing the tides would always serve them, never consume them. But water has a memory. And when it rises, it erases more than just structures, it drowns the stories. And yet, somehow, those stories still rise back to the surface. Because every submerged city we find reveals something we thought we knew. And something we never expected. Take the city of Dwarka, off the western coast of India. In Hindu mythology, Dwarka was a golden city, built by the god Krishna himself, an advanced, almost heavenly place that was said to have sunk beneath the ocean after his death. For centuries, many dismissed it as legend. But in 2001, archaeologists found underwater structures off the Gulf of Khambhat that matched descriptions of the ancient city, straight roads, right-angled walls, and pottery dating back 9,000 years. Suddenly, what was once myth became a site of serious scientific interest. This isn't an isolated case. Time and again, we see stories once written off as fiction resurfacing as fact. The lesson? Our ancestors may not have had satellites or sonar, but they remembered. Through stories. Through symbols. Through warnings disguised as legends. That memory, carried forward for generations, is a legacy all its own. And these submerged cities? They aren't just lessons in history. They are warnings carved in salt and stone. Because today, our world is once again on the edge. In just the last few decades, we've seen rising sea levels threaten modern cities. Venice, struggling to stay afloat. Jakarta, sinking faster than any other capital city on Earth. Miami Beach, already investing billions in pumps and seawalls just to hold back the tide. What the ancients endured over centuries, we may experience in decades. That's the haunting legacy of these submerged cities. They remind us that climate isn't constant and civilization isn't permanent. They remind us that human brilliance doesn't always guarantee survival. But they also remind us of something else: our capacity to adapt. These cities were not built by primitive peoples fumbling in the dark. They were built by cultures that understood architecture, astronomy, hydrology, even sacred geometry. They mapped the stars. They aligned their buildings with solstices. They used materials that have outlasted empires. Some even suggest these cities may have understood things we've forgotten: lost arts, lost sciences, lost systems of energy or healing. Whether or not that's true, the fact remains: they thrived until disaster struck. And yet, the memory remained. Today, with every discovery, we stitch that memory back together. Not just through research, but through reconnection. Divers touching carved stones that haven't seen sunlight in 7,000 years. Robotic cameras capturing the final image of a temple built before recorded history. Children learning in school that once, long before skyscrapers and smartphones, humanity built cities by the sea. And lost them. There's power in that memory. Because it teaches us that we're not the first to build. Not the first to rise. And not the first to fall. But we can be the first to learn from it, fully, openly, without arrogance. That's the ultimate legacy of submerged cities. Not just as footnotes in a history textbook, but as mirror reflections of who we are and where we might be heading. As sea levels rise and coastlines shift, the lost cities of the past become blueprints for survival, maps of caution, and whispers of resilience. Their builders are long gone, but their message still reaches us. Build wisely. Listen to the land. Respect the sea. And never assume that what stands today will stand forever. In a world changing faster than ever before, maybe these ancient voices, silent for millennia, are rising up to speak. One last time. To remind us that the ocean doesn't just hide the past. It foretells the future. So what have we truly uncovered? A sunken road here. A shattered column there. But more than ruins, we've found evidence of memory. A shared human memory, preserved not in scrolls or stone tablets, but in silence, pressure, and salt. These underwater cities are not just relics. They are reminders. Reminders that our history didn't begin where textbooks say it did. Reminders that our civilizations have risen and fallen more times than we've dared to count. Reminders that even the deepest sea cannot fully bury the truth forever. We are only beginning to ask the right questions. And each expedition, each sonar scan and robotic dive, is not just an effort to recover the past, but a search for ourselves. What did they know that we forgot? What mistakes did they make that we are now repeating? And what warnings still wait to be heard, hidden beneath layers of silt and time? These are not stories of fantasy. They are our inheritance. The submerged cities speak, not through words, but through presence. Through mystery. Through what was built and what was lost. So if something in this journey stirred you, curiosity, awe, maybe even unease, don't let it end here. There are more mysteries waiting to surface. More worlds buried just beyond reach. And more truths we've been trained not to see. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to join us as we uncover them, one layer at a time. Thumbs up like this video if you believe our past is deeper than we've been told. Speech balloon, comment your thoughts. Which submerged city do you think still hides something no one's dared to reveal? And before you go, explore the Uncharted Mysteries playlist on your screen now. Because what you've seen here is only the beginning. The surface tells a story, but the deep never forgets.